Good, still morning. Good morning, everybody. I think we're all ready now, and thank you for your patience as we got set up here. The very first thing we're going to do is our opening prayer.
The Lord be with you. Holy and loving God, we give thanks for this opportunity to gather, to reflect on what has been this past year, and to look forward to what will be. We ask your blessing over this time together, especially be with our presenters and our vestry nominees. Help ground them for this moment and help them feel our appreciation for their willingness to serve. May our time together be a blessing. Amen.
Thank you. We have we call them our tellers. They're the vote counters, and I don't know if you've all received a piece of paper with your ballot. But if you haven't, please raise your hand so that they can get out and get them to you. There are some requirements according to the bylaws. In order to vote, you have to be a member of the church. And what that means is that you have been baptized in the name of the Trinity and that your baptism is recorded here at St. John's. And you have to be at least 16 years of age, and you have to have been a member at least for a month. And they say in the bylaws, a contributor on record. That doesn't mean you don't have to be someone who pledges, but you have to contribute in some way, shape, or form, which includes involvement in the church through one of our organizations or some other participation. So we're not going to test you. It's going to be, we're going to trust you, and you can only vote once. So there are three candidates here. This is also very important. We have one additional thing. So first of all, it's an up or down vote for Nora, for senior warden, Nora Rigby, and Alfred Tesmar for junior warden. They've already served 1 year. Our custom is that each senior warden and junior warden serves for 2 years in each term. So Nora actually was junior warden for 2 years and now senior warden for 1, and she's going to do one more if you elect her. She'll do 1 more year. And then Alfred has done 1 year so far as junior warden, and he's got another junior warden year coming up, if you decide you want him. And then these are our 6 wonderful candidates for the 3 positions of a 4-year vestry term. Now, this is important and maybe late-breaking news. We put the word out there to vote. If you can't be here in person, as you all are, we've asked people who couldn't be here to vote ahead of time, either through sending an email to Preston or by voting by paper ballot. If you didn't, I'm looking at you now, if you're watching and you're live streaming, if you didn't get the message, you can send an email to hello@stjohns-dc.org, stjohns-dc.org. And if you send that in the next 4 or 5 minutes, your votes can be counted, and we will be able to include your votes as well. We wanted to make sure that that was possible. Okay. And it looks like the voting has already taken place. The tellers, are you good? We have music queued up, but I don't think we're going to need it. Thank you anyway. Appreciate that, Brent. And now to the treasurer's report.
Good morning. Rob, you'll click for me?
Yes.
I'm Casey Evans. I'm the treasurer of St. John's. I'm here to tell you all about what's been going on from a financial perspective for this last fiscal year. So for 2024, I've got some slides that will get popped up, and then I've also, all the information that I'm presenting is written out in the treasurer's report as well. Microphone can't hear. Can you hear me now? Okay. I can't, I'm really tall. How about now? Yes. Okay. All right. So I'm Casey Evans. I'm the treasurer for St. John's. I'm going to take you through the treasurer's report, which is outlined in the annual report, and just financial highlights for 2024. All right. Here's my first slide. So what you have here is our 2024 revenue. Okay, and you've got 2 columns. You've got our 2024 actual numbers, and you've got our budgeted numbers, so you can see how we've compared. We did pretty well in terms of pledges, 98% of what was budgeted. Also, that second line is what we've pulled over from our endowment to account for our revenue. One thing to point out where we're a little short was offerings. We got a little less than we expected this year. We did great at Christmas, but overall, over the course of the year, we were under a bit. And then also for programs and events, we did well. A few more weddings than we expected, 1 or 2 more funerals in addition to that. Our venue rentals, we are working to build out opportunities for folks outside of the church to rent our parish hall. And so we had a few rentals this year, not as many as we thought we had, but we are optimistic. We've got some reservations coming in 2025, and so that seems like we'll be in better shape next year as compared to what we're budgeted. And then our other contributions, those are our non-pledge and things along those lines that we receive. But overall, from a revenue side, you can see our total revenue was about $2.7 million, pretty close to what we budgeted. Next slide. 2.27. All right. Now, what we've got here is still focused on pledges, but what it's showing is the amount of pledges we've received in terms of actual pledges and the cash received compared to that. So kind of what people pledged versus what they actually gave us. You can see over the course of the last 4 or 5 years, that yellow line below is how much is still outstanding. So how much of people's pledges we did not actually get. They didn't follow through on their pledges. We are trending a lot better over the years past. We were closer to 6% of pledges in 2020. Now we're much more closer to average. Any business is going to have revenue that they don't collect. We're no different. So we're at about 3.6 as of the end of the year in terms of pledges that were not collected in cash. But it's very common for us to receive in this example, it'll be 2024 pledges in the first quarter of 2025. We expect no different here. So we do expect that number to go down. We've seen it gone down already over the course of January. So we're in pretty good shape there too. Offerings, I had mentioned offerings was one of those line items that we didn't track as well as we thought. You can see the trend over the course of the last 5 years. 2020, we were closer to 157,000 in offerings, and that's just passing around the offering or someone doing the QR code on the bulletin. This will include seasonal offerings as well, so Christmas and Easter. And so we are trending downward when it comes to offerings. And so this most recent year, like I mentioned, we were under what we budgeted. We budgeted 134,000. We ended up $118,678. So we're keeping that in mind as we're budgeting for next year. All right, and what you see here are our total expenses, operating expenses. So in total, our operating expenses are $359,929, so almost really $2.36 million. Our largest expenses is personnel, and what you see is personnel is actually spread out over a lot of these different line items, and so you'll see it in program support, you see it in music, clergy, buildings and grounds, and administration. It totals a little over $1.4 million in terms of cost of personnel. And again, it's spread out in all these different line items. As you can see, our largest line item is buildings and ground, just keeping this wonderful space intact and what all that takes. But our operating expenses, actually, we tracked a little bit under what was budgeted for this year. And so we had a little bit less spending, primarily due to the loss of a clergy member moving on to another opportunity in mid-year. But we're in good shape here. When we look at 2025, we took some lessons learned from 2024 and we brought them into 2025. And so in terms of our revenue, we went ahead and budgeted less. In what we specifically budgeted was $1.14 million, which is down from the $1.16 we budgeted last year since we didn't quite receive that total target. We're going to budget less in offering as well. We're going to basically assume we'll get the same we got this year, so 118,000 and some change versus the 135 that we had budgeted for last year. Like I mentioned, we're optimistic about programs and events. We've got some great events lined up even in the start of this year in terms of reservations. We know what's coming and it's tracking a lot better than this time last year. And so our program and event income, it's still down from what we anticipated in 2024. Still want to take a conservative approach. About 46,400, and then every year we draw about 5%, we draw exactly 5% from our endowment to help us with our funding. On the expense side, a couple things to note. We approved a budget that has a 2.5% salary increase, which is in line with what the diocese recommends. We are going to maintain our pledge to the diocese of $135,000 for the year and continue to pledge 10% of our revenue to outreach. And we gave a little bit of bump to buildings and ground just because things are more expensive now and our average costs have gone up. And we also are anticipating a few new initiatives around formation, so youth programming and things like that. So we did give a little bump there to our expenses around formation. And then keeping in mind, that amount of pledges that we don't receive in terms of cash, I showed you that earlier, is about 3.86%. We account for that, so we budget for that. And so we're assuming that we're going to have about 3.73% of uncollected. So you might see, those of you who like math, the revenues are a little bit less than the total expenses, and so we did authorize a $20,158 use of reserve from our savings to balance our budget. So that is what the vestry approved. That is all I've got. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Mic working? No? Speak up? Okay. Good morning. Hi, I'm your senior warden, Nora Rigby. Good morning. This is actually my first time speaking from this podium, so it's a new adventure for me. So as usual, it's been a very busy and productive year at St. John's. It's been my honor to work with Rob, the clergy, the very hardworking staff, my junior warden, Alfred Tesmar, and the vestry to accomplish a lot of these goals that we set out for ourselves this year. I want to highlight two in particular, one much more visible than the other, but hopefully they're of equal importance. The first one is the bell tower renovation, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. As you know, our bell tower had been in disrepair for many years. It housed this wonderful historic Revere bell, and it was a many years long process it took to plan, fundraise, and execute on the renovation of the bell tower. We also had to replace, as part of that project, the roof of the church, which had been failing for some time. So we are delighted, and frankly, I am somewhat amazed to report that the project came in both on time and on budget, which any of you who've ever done a home renovation, thank you. Very little thanks to me, but I will tell you who to thank in just a second. But any of you who've ever done a home renovation know that's pretty unheard of. So we're very grateful for that. And equally as exciting to report is that we met our fundraising goal for the project, which was $1.9 million. No easy feat. So we've raised the entire $1.9 million. We have received $1.3 million of that. And we expect to receive the remainder over the next couple of years because some people pledged over a 3-year period. All in all, the bell tower renovation was a smashing success. Please join me in thanking Julia Koster, who was the chair of the bell tower committee and worked for the past several years sort of from start to finish on the project, and frankly made it look easy, and it was not. Also, thank you very much for their excellent leadership to David Galilee, who was the chair of the fundraising committee, to Chase Wren, who was the chair of the building committee, and to Sharon Park, who was just a member of the building committee, but is a historic preservation architect by trade and was invaluable to the project. So, we're very blessed to have such talented and dedicated parishioners, and as a result of the work and the materials that they chose, we expect that our newly renovated bell tower will last a lot longer than previous iterations, and that it will be a much longer time before we have to renovate the bell tower again, so that's great. And as soon as we finish the renovation of the bell tower, we turn to repainting the church, which had been sorely in need of repainting for several years, in part just because of normal wear and tear, but also because of the fires and the protests during the summer of 2020. Fortunately, we received insurance funds to pay for that, so we didn't have to take any of that money out of the bell tower project, but With the combination of the new bell tower, the new gilding, the new paint on the church, I think our church, our beautiful historic church, looks better than ever. So I hope you all agree. So the next thing I wanted to highlight, the next big project, which is definitely probably less visible than the bell tower, is the discernment and allocation of the Macaulay gift, which we received towards the end of 2023. As many of you know, we were enormously blessed at the end of 23 to receive a gift of just over $6 million from former parishioner Dorothy Macaulay, who died in the 1990s. Importantly, Mrs. Macaulay's will left half of her estate to St. John's and the other half to an organization that supports the poor, the sick, and the homeless. The trustees of Mrs. Macaulay's estate decided to give us the entirety of the estate because they believed, as we do, and correctly, that we also support, our outreach supports the poor, the sick, and the homeless. It is very important to the vestry, it has been very important that we may honor Mrs. Macaulay's wishes about using half of the gift to support the poor, the sick, and the homeless. So with that in mind, the vestry decided to sort of bifurcate the process of deciding how to allocate the gift, focusing first on the St. John's half and how we would use that piece of the gift, and second on what we're calling the outreach half, the half dedicated to the poor, the sick, and the homeless. And I just want to say, as delightful as it is and amazing to receive a gift of over $6 million, it has been a surprising amount of work to figure out how to best use it, because we know how important it can be over the life of this church. So one of the first things we did was convene a committee of Lauren Edwards, Richard Mesker, and Rob Mossbacher, to collect some feedback from the parish about needs of the parish, long-term goals, what you might do, sort of blue sky ideas now that we have this big pot of money that landed in our lap. And we took those recommendations and discussed them with the vestry. So ultimately, after several months long process and lots of discussion, the vestry made a decision in June about how to allocate the St. John's half of the Macaulay gift. At that point, it was valued at $3.4 million because our $6 million had grown significantly in just the few months since we had received it, which was fortunate. So we allocated that $3.4 million as follows, we being the vestry. We put $2.75 million of it into our endowment, into a special fund designated to support the buildings and grounds of the church because, as Casey mentioned, it's expensive to keep up this building. And then we allocated $325,000 to operating reserves and another $325,000 to a special projects fund to pay for some long-needed improvements to the church and any other sort of special projects that may come up. The first special project that the vestry has voted to spend money on is buying some furniture for our parish house. So you may have seen one new piece of furniture. There's a table in there now, but other things are on order and they will be coming soon. So I don't want to spend too much more time. I just want to briefly mention a few less visible things. We reconstituted our audit committee, which had been dormant for several years, led by Matt Bodie, longtime parishioner. They did an RFP process, found us a new auditor, and completed an audit of our 2023 financial statements, which is the first audit we've had since 2018. So we feel very good about getting back to that regular process, and we will continue to do that yearly. Another sort of brief item to mention is the continuation of our Historic Preservation Fund, which we started establishing in 2023. It is quite the administrative, bureaucratic process to get that all set up. The goal of the Historic Preservation Fund is to have a place to receive donations and to do fundraising to support the buildings and grounds of the church from people outside the parish who might not be willing to donate to a church, but would donate to support this historic building. We are well on our way. We received our 501c3 designation from the IRS, which was a big hurdle in this past year, and we're getting our charitable solicitation licenses. None of this is at all very exciting, but I think one day it will be when we sort of get all the paperwork filed and get it off and running. We should also very much thank our parish council, Harker Rhodes, who's been working through all of these very Byzantine details, and he's highly overqualified to do so if you know anything about his background, but we're delighted to have him have done that. The last thing that I want to mention is that we've adopted a responsible investing policy for our endowment, led by Lisa Kirchenbauer and our investment committee. We adopted a policy to ensure that our endowment supports companies that are aligned with our values. The National Church has already a list of prohibited investments that they choose not to invest in, and so we basically voted to follow, where practical, the National Church's policy, although we have wonderful investment advisors, and if there is ever a reason to deviate from that, we are free to do so, but in general, we're following the policy of the National Church. That's all I have. It's been a very productive and exciting year, and we look forward to 2025. Thank you.
Okay, hello everybody. I have a few things. I put some slides together looking back at the year that we've had and a lot of things that we've achieved and experienced, and really it's just going to be a tip of the iceberg. So I thought it would be important to just remind us all, we see this in the website, on our bulletins, but it's important to remember what our mission statement is, and that is that St. John's shines as a beacon of God's love through faith, worship, care, and community, and offers a place of grace at our historic corner in the nation's capital. The grace that we offer is not ours to give, it's God's grace, but it is our place to be the ones to share it. And we do that in many different ways. And at St. John's, things that take place here and that we get to be a part of are worship and fellowship, learning, and service. All really important to the life of our community. Worship this year was robust. We have seen, some of the things that we didn't have during the pandemic and had to be away from. We're still living back into that way of being together. We got a couple new things. I think this was our second year doing a blessing of the animals at a proper Sunday morning. Look at that. It's at the 9 o'clock service, and so that means if people who hate animals are, you can avoid the 9 o'clock on that day and come to the 11 o'clock. But it's a wonderful new tradition for us that is going to stay. There's so many ways to be a part of our services. If you are interested in learning and exploring, perhaps being a chalice bearer, a crucifer, usher, if you're a youth, acolyte, there are all kinds of wonderful ways to be a part of it. Of course, singing in the choir, and then I wanted to highlight our evensong, relatively new to us. It's still, I would say, building steam. I would love for us to get the word out even more about this real treasure that we offer once a month on Wednesday nights. It's currently, we have it every third Wednesday at 5:30, and Brent does a fantastic job with planning and executing that. Also, I want to just call out, this was something that we started doing, I think it was 3 years ago, doing a Lessons and Carols in the evening for Christmas. For many years, it was done in the morning. We decided to move it to the evening and see what would happen. Last year, we had about 200 people. This year, we had about 400 people. It was phenomenal. And so if you didn't get to go to the service this year, mark it on your calendars. It's going to be the last Sunday in Advent just before Christmas. And I know it's good too for some people who travel and won't be able to be here for actual Christmas Eve. You can experience a St. John's Christmas with Lessons and Carols. Another thing is our chorister program continues to grow. Brent, we were talking in my office the other day, and he said, there are 19 kids involved. You don't see them all at the same time, necessarily, but we've got our youth choristers, which are really elite singers, and we have younger ones that are coming up the ranks. And it's a beautiful thing for me here in the middle of the week on a Wednesday and a Thursday to hear the sounds of children. And sometimes it's like thunder running up and down the stairs in the middle, but you also hear the angelic singing, and we're touching many lives, the lives of the kids and their parents and the others in their community. So fellowship. This is actually a twofer, this slide, because it's both service and fellowship. This is wrapping gifts for the angel tree. But one of the things about St. John's is people enjoy being with other people here. People enjoy getting to know one another. It's a rich and vibrant community. And if you are interested in more fellowship and being a part of it, there are going to be more opportunities this year. We've relaunched the Lafayette Fellowship. So La Trobe Fellowship is our young adult fellowship. It's mostly people in their 20s and 30s. And Lafayette is for folks a little older than La Trobe who want to gather and have some fun. And thanks to some great leadership, Caroline and Hillary, who isn't here this morning, and Christine Davies, you all have done a beautiful job of gathering and starting, getting it going again. Family meetups is a relatively new thing too that has been led by Sarah X. Cardwell, and it's exactly what the title says, families meet up, usually on a Saturday. Sometimes there's a playground involved, often there's food and outdoor time with kids and parents. St. John's Pride. It's fellowship, but it's more than just fellowship. This actually is a tiki cruise, so this is pretty much fellowship. But St. John's Pride is an organization that has really been blossoming here, and this is gathering of folks, LGBTQ folks and allies at the Pride Parade. You can check out the brand new T-shirts that were made in the banner. It's really wonderful. There are all kinds of ways to get together. Our youth group is both learning and fellowship. This is actually 3 youth leaders and 1 youth, but usually it's, more youth than just the one. And as a parent of a youth, I know I'm really proud of the good quality offering that we're giving to these young people as they're coming up in the world and developing their faith. Learning is something that people at St. John's love. And we have a forum series that is really remarkable. I know I don't need to advertise it because I know many of you come and enjoy that. Almost every week during the program year, we have some phenomenal speaker teaching us and sharing with us something that's really worth knowing. This was one of the highlights. We got to host the Secretary of Department of Homeland Security, who gave us an hour of his time and shared some really remarkable and interesting offerings with us. So we'll continue, of course, with the forum. And let's thank Clark Irvin, because our Inquirers class is a long-time tradition that we offer. We usually offer it twice a year, once in the spring, once in the fall. It's especially for people who are new to the church or new to the Episcopal world, and you can learn about those things. But anybody who's curious and wants to learn a little more, you're welcome to come. And it's also a chance for people to get to know each other. And it's sort of like an incoming class almost, that people will then sort of bond and know each other through the course of their time in this community. That was our spring class. Another great offering that we have is called Being With. Now, I will confess, it's a lot harder to describe being with. Honestly, the name tells it all. It's all about, being with others isn't as easy as it sounds. We need to focus. We need to settle in. We need to sometimes depart from those things that distract and pull us away from the gift of presence with other people. And this is a deep dive in the way that we can learn to be more fully present with one another, but also with God. And the two go hand in hand. And it's a small learning group that we've been running it through Zoom, and we're hoping to do Being With in person finally for the first time this year at least once. So if you're interested in being with, you speak to me or to Sarah, and we would love to connect you in. The guy who is standing with Will, the reason there's a picture, he's actually from St. Martin in the Fields. He's the person who's dedicated to supporting Being With groups around the world, and he makes Will look short, actually, in that picture, which I think is remarkable. This is a brand new thing that we haven't even shared with anyone yet, but there is a phenomenal scholar and priest. Her name is Sarah Coakley. When I was in seminary years ago, I used to hear about her and books that she was writing and lectures she was offering. She now lives in Northern Virginia. She used to be at Cambridge, and she's Anglican, she's English. She's going to be offering a course on prayer during Lent, and there will be 2 talks that she gives for our speaker series to kick off Lent. And it's going to be open to anybody who wants to gather Tuesday evenings. It'll be 5:15 to 6 o'clock. And we're going to have one group that gathers in Northern Virginia, one group that gathers here, downtown DC at St. John's in person, and one group, we hope, if we can find the right space to host it, on the border with Maryland and Northwest DC, somewhere in that zone, maybe Silver Spring. And we will start the session in person through Zoom, but then we'll turn off the electronics and we'll pray together. I think it's going to be fantastic. And so I encourage you, if you're interested, speak with me or Sarah. We'd love to include you with this. And even if you don't have the opportunity to do the Tuesdays, you will get a lot from her talks that she offers in the speaker series. We're also hoping to get back into offering Sacred Ground. We offered it for 2 or 3 years here. Many people did Sacred Ground in the learning circles involved, and we didn't run it for at least a year, and there is interest in running again because we have a lot of new members who have not had a chance. Sacred Ground is a film-based dialogue series on race and faith, and it is a deep experience. It will change you. Service. I mentioned service. We have lots of ways that people can serve. Some is more hands-on, some is more conceptual. This is folks from our refugee ministry. We partner with Lutheran Social Services, and you can see we've resettled people into homes, and we've done other drives for equipment and items. This is Anacostia Riverkeeper. We're partnering with them these days and do river cleanups. Look at all the trash they cleaned up there. It's important for all you to know, if you read the annual report, you can read all the details on this, but we give away, of all the pledge dollars that we receive, we tithe it into outreach. So we give at least $100,000 away. So for every pledge you make, 10% gets given to those who we can support through outreach. And things that we do, we include educational outreach, communities and schools, and our beloved Bishop Walker School. International Kwasa College, which is in South Africa. We've partnered with them for many years, and those in Israel-Palestine. American Friends of the Diocese of Jerusalem and their partners, which includes the Ali Arab Hospital in Gaza, and the Princess Basma Center. The Christmas drive, Christmas gift drive, which we call the Angel Tree Drive. Grace's Table, refugee ministry locally, and Anacostia Riverkeeper are some of our local support that we do. And then equity and justice. We have some community partners with the downtown cluster of congregations, Samaritan Ministry of Greater Washington, and Washington Interfaith Network, which I believe St. John's was part of the actual initiation of bringing that ministry into existence. So we have to say a note as we think about this last year. One sad thing is we had to say goodbye to Sean, who was part of our ministry team. His wife, Anna, who's also a priest, is a chaplain in the Army. She's a reserve in the Army, and she had not been deployed for a while. And so they decided when they deployed her to deploy her for almost a whole year and to the Middle East. And it was just not possible that Sean could stay living locally, as essentially he'd be a single dad with a full-time job and 2 very little kids. And so the family relocated to Minnesota. And we had a send-off and wish him well as he went off, and that's a cake. Whoops, that's a cake. Yeah, you're like, I saw some looks on your faces. What's that? But we also got to welcome Eric. So that was a pretty wonderful thing that happened this year. Eric is not here this morning because, he's a seminarian. By the way, Eric, you may or may not know, Eric is not doing an internship with us. He's not here to learn. He's here working in just hourly, in a part-time way. Even though he's a third-year seminarian, he's here, I told him, you're not here to learn, you're here to work. And he's also learning, of course, but he's been fantastic with us. He's in England right now. This is Eric's life. He's like, someone just invited me to go to England for 10 days, and I can't say no to it. And it's a retreat for young clergy and based in Canterbury Cathedral. So he's there having a really incredible time, apparently. Many of us were there to celebrate his ordination to the diaconate. So he's a newly ordained deacon, and you can see youth and Latrobe folks. The main thing he's been focusing on in his leadership here has been our Latrobe ministry and our youth ministry. And so it's been a blessing to have him. This is from the morning of the inauguration. It was really good to be a team with these other 3 great clergy, your clergy here at St. John's. We had another wonderful person we got to welcome. His name is John Queen. And I think many of you have met him already. If you haven't, reach out, say hello to John. He is the newest addition to our fantastic team of sextons. We are very, very fortunate to have the team that we've got. Okay, the bell tower. I have to say a word about the bell tower. This was a big deal, just as Nora spelled out for us. Julia Coster, who is visiting her family in the West Coast right now, and I believe is there and can't be here, but Julia did a remarkable job, just as Nora had said, and deserves much praise. Also, Chase Rind and David Galilee, thank you both. I think you're both here for your great efforts to support in your own ways. And, of course, our MVP from regular community committee member MVP, Sharon. And I love, you can see Sharon, she worked many years at the Smithsonian. That's her own hard hat that has the Smithsonian sign on the top, holding a giant, who knows what it is. This is something she found. She could probably tell you what it is. It came from the bell tower. A 200-year-old spike. This is a special picture to me because I really remember that day and how exciting it was to see the giant lift that for the very first time we're getting a close look at what was the condition. Because we didn't really know. When you're looking from the ground, there's no way to really tell how bad is it. Well, how bad was it? It was this bad. From the ground, you can't really tell that. But from up close, we saw that the years had really taken their toll. This is the dome. From the ground and the sun being out, you kind of think that it's gold. It wasn't very gold anymore. There's a lot of bird poop and things like that. This is a close-up of what had been the gilded dome. And I remember one of the workmen that I was talking to, he said, oh yeah, clearly it had been painted white at some point. It had never been painted white. That just is an indication of what happens over time. The scaffolding that was devised, that was not an easy thing to do. It took a lot of planning and thought, and this was not the first iteration, but the final choice ended up really working. And it was a fascinating project to be in on those meetings and to learn of, what are the options? What could you do? And you can see what happened is we didn't want to rest the scaffolding on the actual church, so they built a little tower on each side of the church, and then you got these steel beams, and then it's hovering over the church, but all of the force going down straight into the ground. And then we created a walkway, which you all used for the better part of last year to get in and out of the front church. And it was so exciting when it got removed. We got to see the bell up close and personal for the first time in a long, long time. This is one of the fellows from Verdun, the bell experts, who we hired to come and inspect. And good news is our bell was in great shape. It was missing a couple bolts, which was alarming, but we have put the bolts back. It's like a 1,000-pound bell. This is an important image too, because even though you saw the view of the exterior of the tower and how much deterioration there was, the core of the tower was like brand new. This wood was superior quality to what you could find today. It was old growth Virginia yellow pine, and it really looked like it was brand new. And it's interesting too to see the way that they engineered it. They over-engineered it. And so that tower is true and perfect, as if it was brand new, at least in terms of the structure part of it. And then along the way, you may not be able to easily see what I'm showing in this picture, but there's the 200-plus-year-old wood, and then you've got brand new wood supporting it. That sort of tells a picture of what we were going at with the tower. Not to replace, but to bolster, and to make it so it would be stronger and ready to last for many, many more years. This was another great discovery. I think we were all surprised when they took the copper off of the dome. What was found was this handmade, hand-cut. Remember, this is before computers or Ace Hardware or electric power tools. They had created this beautiful curve to create the shape of the dome underneath. These are like wedge pieces of wood that meet at the center, and they kind of improvised and filled it in different ways, and you can feel the handcrafted nature of all of it. And so that, and this just gives you a sense of the scale. This is Dave, one of our key partners on the construction end. So some of the wood was removed and has been put back, and you can see a shell of fresh wood has covered it, but that bit in the core is still it's been preserved. It's still there. So then over the wood, we did a waterproof and weatherproof sheathing, and then the copper, the new copper, which has now been gilded. And this was like our first view as the scaffolding was starting to come down, to see the beautiful dome in the sky. And this was when the scaffolding was almost totally down. Very exciting for us to see. And this was a couple weeks ago. And then I should say a quick word too about our celebration that we had in October. We invited friends who had supported community members. The mayor was here and gave a little talk. We had the historian Sean Willentz who gave a talk. He's a professor at Princeton. We had a cake in the shape of the bell tower. We had some art on display, and one of the highlights is that AFL-CIO let people from St. John's go to the top where they have a balcony looking straight down on the tower. We got to see that view, the White House, and the Bidens were nice to plan to fly Marine One and land it, like during the time when people are up there. I got to watch it land. And you can also see the roof project, which was partway through at that point. So there, so just I close by saying thank you all. Thank you all. We did our first Kwasa trip in a long time this year, and I was very fortunate to get to be part of that trip. I'd never been to the continent, never been to South Africa, of course. And with Zoe and Sarah, they got to come as well. We had a great experience. Back to this picture. We brought a whole bunch of beanies that we distributed to the kids. It was our summer, but it was their winter, and so beanies were in order. And what you find if you go to Kwasa is it's electric. There's an energy there that is phenomenal. And I could describe it to you, but I hope many of you will have a chance next time we do a trip that you'll get to experience it yourself. And Sharon Denny is our partner in ministry who built this school up. She's a remarkable human being. And she will probably be here in the next year or so, and you'll hopefully get a chance to meet her and get to experience what she is like. This is Zoe with some of the oldest kids. They're, I think, all 8th graders in that picture. Like I said, it's electric. They usually wear uniforms, but this day wasn't uniforms for some reason, more with the beanies. And one cool thing that we got to do is we planted trees when we were there, about 24-ish trees, each tree dedicated to somebody who has been part of this partnership over the years. There's one for Luis, one for Lou, one for Bishop Walker himself, one for Sharon, one for her late husband. And all these trees are, they were chosen, they're native African species that are going to do well, and they're going to grow and provide shade for the kids for years and years to come, all around the campus. And this is us with some of the buildings and grounds folks that we planted the trees together with them. This picture, after being in Kwasa in Springs, which is outside of Johannesburg, we traveled around other parts of the country, and we did go to Cape Town. And this is actually the Archbishop's residence, where the Archbishop currently lives, but it's also where Bishop Tutu lived back in the day. And this is a special location because when Nelson Mandela was finally freed, he spent his first night of freedom at this residence. And this is a picture of the morning, when Bishop Tutu welcomed him into his home, standing right where we were standing. It was a powerful thing to get to walk in the footsteps of those giants, of Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu. This is at the Tutu Center in Cape Town with Janet Jobson, who's the head of it. And that quilt behind us all, the four of us, it used to be in Tutu's own office for years. And we also got to meet this person named Franco Prinsloo. And Franco Prinsloo is a musician, a composer, and thanks to a generous gift, he has a brand new composition celebrating the life and ministry of Bishop Tutu. And we're going to be the ones to premiere it. And it'll be, mark your calendars, February 23rd. And Mr. Prinsloo is actually going to be our guest for the speaker series. And he's going to speak to us by Zoom from South Africa. So mark your calendar. We're going to have a special guest preacher, Bishop Eugene Sutton, former Bishop of Maryland, will be here. So it's going to be a great day. Bishop Tutu is a remarkable individual and somebody worth learning more about and celebrating his life and ministry. We visited a church when we were in Cape Town that has some partnering with, not us necessarily, but with the diocese. It's in a township, and are you guys almost ready for the video? I just wanted to show this. This gives you just a flavor of the experience of worship in South Africa. This is just, the service was, I don't know, like 4 or 5 hours, and it went by in like 10 minutes. There was a lot, this is what it was like. So, pretty cool. I said it was in a township. This is the township. You can see life is really rough, and there's a lot of need. And so the work that is going on, what Kwasa is doing, what the Anglican Church in Southern Africa is doing is very needed. We got to go to the Apartheid Museum, and of course, you have to do that when you go to South Africa to learn. And this is just the final slide and kind of a bonus. It was a bonus to us. We went to Hermanus, which is almost the southern tip of the continent. A beautiful place where there's lots of whales and everything. The Anglican Church has a little enterprise for youth to learn about business skills, and the youth actually build drums and sell them as a business. These are people who live in the township there, and so we got to experience that as well. Talking about this past 12 months, in actually the last month, we've had some presidential visits, and actually, wait a minute. President Bartlett, I'll move on. So this was on the 20th. You probably read what I've written about it. I'm proud of the service that we were able to offer, and it was a great team effort of many of our leaders here. And it was a lot of work, actually, to put that service together. We also had a surprise visit on the Friday before. So it was kind of amazing. In one weekend, on a Friday, we were visited by the sitting president, and then on the Monday, we had the incoming president come. And even for St. John's, I think that is a rare thing. And we got to have a little bit of time. We had to keep it top secret to keep the security as minimal as possible. And both did sign the prayer book. And this is something that warms my heart a little. It's worth sharing. Presidents, if they want to write a little extra beyond their signature, can. And Joe Biden knew that, and so he gave some thought to what he would write. And he wrote, love thy neighbor as thyself, Mark 13. So that is now newly inscribed on the 17th of this month in that historic book. A little more about stewardship. You've heard about, we at this moment have 285 pledges for a total of $1,117,800. That means our pledges are actually up from this time last year by 11 pledges, and the amount pledged is up by 58,000, which is great. You never know what's going to happen from now through the end of the year. Usually, pledges continue coming in through the course of the year. People join the church, there are new pledges that come, or some people just haven't pledged yet, and they make their pledge. Last year, from now to the end of the pledging totality, we gained another 35 pledges. And almost $75,000. We're budgeting for only 1.14, which is about 20,000 over our current number. But if we are fortunate, so we're being on the conservative side. But if we're fortunate, like we were last year, we'll be, closer to 1.19 instead of 1.14. And that really makes a difference. One thing that I want to mention that I think neither of you actually touched on, but it's a very important thing. With Sean not here, with me full-time and Sarah 3/4 time, and Will is not, he has a day job, so we're lucky to have him when he's able to be with us. We're finding that all of the needs of a church like this, it's hard to really cover with just 1.75 staff clergy. And so the vestry has done, in their discernment, they have made the move to increase the budgets in the budget to have another half clergy, a half time. So that will start when Eric finishes his semester. And it's harder to hire a half-time clergy than it is to hire a full-time, or even a 75% time. Pledging, if the pledging comes in as we expect, or as we hope, we might be in a better position we'll see what things do in the next few months. If it comes even better, then we might even be able to consider something a little fuller. So I say that only to say giving really does make a tangible difference. And for those of you who have already made your pledge, a big thank you to you. Thank you for your support, all of you. This is a generous church, and it's really a beautiful thing for me as rector to be able to see your witness of generosity. Speaking of pledging, Caroline Ferris, where are you? There you are. Caroline, thank you for your ministry. She is, of course, our chair of stewardship. She's following Toby Stock, who was chair for my whole time right up until now. Hard act to follow because he's a professional fundraiser. But it's been it's been fantastic to have you among us and your wonderful energy. And big thanks to the whole committee. The whole committee, it's not the work that everybody loves to do, but some people like to do it. And thank you, the stewardship committee members who do this work. We talked already a little bit about Mrs. McCauley and her phenomenal gift. It was about 6.1 when we first learned of it. It's over 7 million now. It's a moving target. I didn't want to put the exact figure, but we, as you know, half of it we'll be using for St. John's purposes and half for the poor, the sick, and the homeless. This is just visuals for what you heard Nora share. 2.75 million for buildings and grounds, 325,000 for special projects, and 325 for reserves. The 2.75 million for buildings and grounds, we see, did you see earlier in Casey's slide, we spend $500,000 plus just on buildings and grounds every year. There are a lot of churches, that's more than their entire budget. The fact that we now have endowed money for buildings and grounds that we can draw on, it's going to be more than $100,000 a year. And what that means is it releases dollars, pledged dollars, to be used for better things, more exciting things, mission and ministry, and not just upkeep of our space. Thanks to Mrs. McCauley and this lasting legacy that she has left for us. Now, we also have an opportunity, and before I talk about the second half of the gift, I want to say some words about something that I've been working together with Frugina Harshani and with Clark Irvin on, which is an opportunity for us to look at our own history. Some of you will know who this is, Alexander Crummell. If you go different parts of Washington, D.C., you'll see plaques and things dedicated to him. He was an Episcopal priest, one of the first African-American ordained clergy members, and doing major leadership in the country. And he was the first, I believe he was the first, but he was, if not the first, he was one of the first leaders of a church called St. Mary's in Foggy Bottom that we actually started. And then from there, he went to St. Luke's on 15th Street. We don't know that much about how St. John's and Reverend Crummell related to each other. There's a lot of our history that we know, but there are some things we don't know, and we'd like to learn more about it, to look at our past in relation to race, in relation to slavery. This is an example of a book I actually have a copy of here that St. Paul's in Richmond did a history of their own church, and it's a very readable and enlightening and interesting book, an important book. St. Paul's in Richmond, that is the church that was known as the Cathedral of the Confederacy. It's where Jefferson Davis went to church during the Civil War. They have dug deep into their own history in a way that is it's helpful. I take very seriously the phrase that our Lord taught, that the truth sets us free. It's good for us to know more about what is true. Yale and many other schools, churches have been doing this. There is an archive at Virginia Theological Seminary that is collecting the histories from around the country of Episcopal churches. Universities are doing it as well. Brown famously, and Yale recently. David Blight, who spoke at our speaker series, wrote this book, which also teaches lessons that people had not known before. And this is what I want to let you know. This is a phrase that Riley Temple taught me, which I think is really, it helps me appreciate. He says, when people who've lived in lives in the past have been forgotten, That's dismembering. And when we remember, we put back together. So to remember, to look at our history, to learn about our history is about people. And we are honoring the dignity and worth of every human being when we do that. We remember, we make whole again, people who've come before and ourselves. And so it's a work of remembering. And so thanks to Clark and Frugina, they're beginning to do some of the work to reach out to look at who would be a good candidate that we would bring on board to do a history project of St. John's. We're not going to rush it, but we're also going to not take forever to do it either. It's going to be hopefully just the right pace. And so a thank you to you both for taking this on. And with this opportunity, you know, we're going to know, we all know, even without reading our history, that St. John's has benefited from certain inequalities in the past. And of course, we can't right every wrong, but we can be intentional as leaders to make a positive difference. I'm going to read the words I wrote to the vestry here that Frugina actually encouraged me to read, so thank you. Is that I don't see this work as being done for the sake of virtue signaling, nor with a main focus on guilt or shame, but rather with a spirit of having the courage of honesty and the love of God, which teaches us, in Tutu's words, to live with a spirit of Ubuntu, which means that we see our lives linked with the lives of all others in God's kingdom. This is when you hear the phrase beloved community, this is what it means. It means the dignity and worth of every human being. And we have an opportunity. As you have heard, we have half of this remarkable gift that we have been told the wishes of the person who gave it is that it should help the sick, the poor, the homeless. We can help the sick, the poor, and the homeless, and also have an eye to do good, to lift up lives, to look at where inequalities exist, especially those that we participated in the past. And we can't right every wrong, but we can do some healing with that effort. And so with this Macaulay gift, what we're calling the outreach portion, we're going to do is a grant process. And we're going to invite people, not us, but people who are out there doing the work. Some of them are going to be groups that we're already partnered with, that we know who they are, we believe in what they do. Some, I think, will be new people we've never worked with before. They'll have a chance to share with us what they would do if we gave them major grants. And I think that we're going to be astounded by what we pray and hope will be transformational efforts that we'll be able to support. So Desiree Davis-Stoller and the Reverend Will Morris are the leaders of this. They're taking this on. They've got a group of people that they're gathering. It's still being formed right now. And just as Nora said, it takes a while. We've done a lot of discernment to get to this stage. There's a chance. I mean, I'm just reflecting exactly how the vestry discussions were. There's a chance that the grants that come in, the proposals, won't fit what the vestry wants to see happen, and maybe not all of the money will go and be given in grants. Maybe the money will be used in different ways to support the poor, sick, and homeless. I'd be surprised, though, because I think that there are inspiring things out there that when we have a chance to support them, we're going to feel honored to be a part of that work. So this is something that will be ongoing, and I'm really excited for the journey ahead with us all. I also want to say a word, elephant in the room, perhaps. Hang on. There's a word that the diocese has been using that other churches use, and the word is reparations. We're not using that word, and there's a real simple reason for why. It's because the word has become very, very polarized. And I'm not saying that the word is a bad word or a good word, but I am saying it's so polarized that it shuts people down. The word that I choose, the word that we've been speaking, is the word repair. Repair is the heart of the goodness of what that is all about. It doesn't mean fix, because you can't fix 100%, but you can do healing work, you can do repair work, and you can move us closer to the church that God wants us to be, doing this kind of work. And so I am very excited to join with other churches that are courageously going in, and I think we have a chance to actually be a leader in these efforts. Okay. To lift up the lives of others and be a blessing, and to build beloved community. And that is that. just a few big thank yous I want to give. We've got 3 vestry members who have just finished up their term as of now. It's Krista Bradley, Wendy Fibison, and David Galley. I think you're all here. If you could stand and make a thank you. Got little thank you items for you guys. Thank you for your great service. Also, a big thank you to Nora Rigby and Alfred Testmar. I hope you guys win another year. I've got a couple surprises for each of you as well. Sarah will deliver. And then I've got a little special surprise appreciation. He may be watching from home right now. I actually hope he's resting because he has worked so hard. First of all, this whole last 12 months, but especially this last month. And you may not see it. He doesn't complain. You've heard the word a mensch. He is a mensch. He is a good guy. And this is, of course, Preston Sharuni. Thank you, Preston. And now to Jeff Agnew for the results of the election. Do you want to tell us here from the microphone?
Sure.
Okay. I'm nervous.
Well, to the two of you, you were both reelected. For better or for worse. The 3 from the 6 candidates, and I think I'll speak hopefully for Rob, that we appreciate all 6 candidates for standing for election. Those of us who've served on the vestry know the time commitment to it. The 3 who were elected are Brian, Debbie, and Julia. Please congratulate.
Thank you all. It's really a pleasure to serve you all as the rector of St. John's. This is a remarkable place. We're going to close with a prayer, and immediately following, there is a spread all set up for us all to enjoy over in Togo West Parlor. You're all invited, of course. Let us pray. The Lord be with you. Loving God, we give you thanks for the good things that you are doing with us and through us, for our church and her leaders, and for all who step into ministry in this place. And we pray that we will be guided by your call to serve one another and to share the gifts of your grace and your love with the world. And in your name, we pray these things that you may continue to guide us into this year ahead. Amen. Thank you all.